Alright, my name is Sean Fallon, and you're listening to episode 20, The Terminator. Welcome to From First to Last. Hello again, and welcome again. My name is Sean Fallon. This is From First to Last. You're listening to episode 20, our second movie special. Today, my guest is a first-time guest and a first-time podcaster. He is Anton Reyes. How are you, Anton, today?
Hi, Sean. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic, mate. What movie series did you choose for us?
I chose Terminator.
Excellent. So the Terminator series, which has run for 5 movies, starting in 1984, and the most recent movie is 2015. Anton, what is your experience with the Terminator series?
Okay, so my Terminator experience has been so I started with the first one. The first one was actually my first R-rated movie ever,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, my dad introduced it to me. It was on a
Yeah.
weeknight. So he was just like, stop your homework. We're gonna go watch Terminator right now. I was just like, okay, what's Terminator? Then he was like, oh, it's this sci-fi series from the 80s. And then I was like, okay, cool. So we watched it, and then I was like about 10 or 11 at the time. So
Okay.
my mind was like completely blown from everything from when they first arrived onto the in LA from the
Mhm.
teleporting bubble with the electricity to like when he was opening the his eye with after it was
Oh,
like
yeah.
shot out, and like one of the first times I've been like legit scared watching a movie was
Hmm.
when the T-800 skeleton first came out of the fire, and like the skin was completely gone, and then like the stop motion was just like walking all over, and then I was just like, oh no, I can't believe that this is legit. I'm scared of something that's stop motion.
Yeah, no, it's still really effective, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
30 odd years later, it's still, I still find it incredibly, like you say, it's still pretty scary. It's relentless. Like for me, the Terminator movies, like my mum and dad are a huge fan of them, and I don't remember, like with the Terminator, definitely it's one of those movies like Star Wars or like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like I don't remember the first time I saw it. I just, as far as I know, I've always seen it. It's like I've never, like I don't remember my first steps, and I don't remember the first time I saw the Terminator. It was just always been part of my life.
Yeah.
Because like my mum and dad, or especially my dad, like huge Arnie fans. So there
Oh,
was always like Arnie was just like a big presence in my house growing up.
yeah.
So rewatching the first movie for this podcast, what did you think?
Oh, yeah. So I was watching it like a couple of days ago, and then like you said, it's still scary now. Like
Hmm.
watching the skeleton, like, cause I wanted to see if I was still scared of it. So I was just like, oh shoot, I think it's still coming after me even until now. And I was trying to imagine it, like, what would it look like today with like clean special effects? Like, let's say if he were like done by the people who did Ultron and stuff, I'd be like,
Hmm.
I don't think I would have been as scared of it as much because I think the stop motion aspect of it, like chasing Sarah and Kyle through the factory, is like what actually makes it scary. Like it feels dated, but it kind of
Hmm.
it's like it's that datedness that makes it feel grounded in that reality.
Yeah, very much so. Like I think Ultron's like a great example because those robots just like I enjoy that film, but
Yeah.
they're not scary. They're not intimidating. They're just sort of like I don't know, like soldiers, like baddies.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Terminator in the factory, even though like you say it is just a model and stop motion and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's timeless. It's still quite eerie and scary, and you're like run away.
Yeah.
You are you're still invested in it, like it very much so. I think that's the
Yeah.
same for a lot of it. Like a lot of the special effects have dated quite a bit, but I think there is still that thing, like you said before about the eye. That
Yeah.
scene where Arnie's like cutting the eye out and doing the surgery, even though you can see that it's a model,
Yeah.
because the knife is touching something and something is falling into the water, your brain sort of makes that jump that it's real, and it's just like, oh god, this is horrible. Like
Yeah,
this is really chilling. Like,
yeah. When
yeah,
he's
very
pulling
much
out
so.
the pupil and he puts it in the water, it's just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, wow, this is some cool 80s movie magic right here.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think Cameron's always been so good for that, just like pushing special effects and practical effects. Well, I guess maybe not so much practical effects these days, like, but
Yeah.
back, like, for this one, very much so, like, everything feels quite real. When Arnie's like, when he's like fixing his arm and it's all cut open and he's like sticking the screwdriver in and his fingers are moving.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a second where I was like, wait, is that Arnie's arm? No, can't be, because he's not made of metal, is
Yeah.
he? Because I mean, this movie, like, I as soon as Arnie appeared, I was just like, yeah, this is why this movie is so popular, because he is just a machine. He's not real, is he? You know what I mean? He's too big, and
Yeah.
he's a monster.
Yeah, I was like, so this is what like put Arnie on the map, right? Like this came before Predator and other stuff.
Yeah, I think he'd done like Conan before this, like Conan the
Yeah.
Barbarian, and like a few. I think he'd done a few other things, but like at this point, because I think he only has 14 lines of dialogue in the film,
Oh,
and
really?
because his English was still sort of getting learnt or whatever, and yeah, like I think James Cameron just like picked him and said, "This is the guy I want," and they actually delayed production to make sure that Arnie could do it. Like I think he was making Conan, and Conan went a bit long, so Cameron. The story is James Cameron pushed production back, so they definitely get Arnie, and in the time that the movie was delayed, James Cameron wrote Aliens.
Wow.
that's the story apparently. So it was all good in the end.
Yeah, perfect choice getting Arnie. Like,
Hmm.
the physique and like the muteness on his face, like it's so there's no he has no expressions, and like that makes it so much better. Like, oh my God, the robot's out to kill you, and he has no emotions. Like I felt like I was Sarah Connor, like just then.
Yeah, that's it. Because there's not. I don't know why we come back to Ultron, but like Ultron, like that sort of thing, is like a baddie robot. You feel as though you could reason with him, or trick him, or appeal to his emotions. Whereas Arnie is just a machine who is he's going to mess you up, and he's going to mess you up until his mission's done, and it doesn't matter who you are, and you believe it. I think that's the whole thing. You believe that Arnie is this machine, like that he's going to, that he is this monster, which is incredible.
Yeah, like the whole this whole thing where he's going through the police station and he's killing all the police guys with like zero emotion whatsoever. I was like, damn, best one of the best action sequences of like my life, or like of what
Yeah,
I've watched. Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, it's that thing as well of like he doesn't have to kill all those people, but
Yeah.
he's killing them all because he needs to kill Sarah Connor, and if they're going to get in the way, they've got to get got. You know what I mean? They've got to be removed. And I mean, I think that sequence is just insane. And it was interesting. Like, it's just amazing how scary. It's that sort of thing. He kind of bursts through the front, starts killing people, then takes out the lights and all that, and you're just like, this is, because I think people do forget that the Terminator, the movie, is a horror movie.
Yeah.
Definitely a horror movie.
Definitely.
Whereas as the movies go on, and we'll definitely discuss this when we get to Genesis,
Yeah.
they become more sci-fi action movies.
Yeah.
Whereas I sort of had in my notes, like Terminator is like capital H horror right at the top, and then there's a little bit of sci-fi and a bit of romance and a bit of some other stuff, but at the top of it, oh, and so it's like a bit of sci-fi, a bit of action, a bit of romance,
Yeah.
but the top of it is just horror. Like there are sequences in it that if you replaced Arnie with like Jason Voorhees,
Yeah.
it would still work. You know what I mean? He would definitely still be like that sort of unstoppable horror villain.
Yeah, he's a slasher in a slasher film. Yeah, at its basic structure, it's like a horror movie. Like, it's perfect pace and like it's pretty on like the Terminator itself. It's pretty relentless. The pace of this movie, like, there's no time to like relax. And like when you are relaxing, what's on the screen is like Arnie like taking out his eye, and that doesn't that's not comforting like at all.
I think the thing is because it has like the final girl as well, like as sort of a horror movie trope, and like people getting killed off one by one, and people trying to help and getting killed and all that, and it's yeah, it definitely follows that template for a good 80s slasher movie or 80s horror movie. Sorry, I think it is. I will say it is aggressively an 80s movie, like the music and the fashion and the hair and all
Yeah.
that. Like it is very of its time, and I think that's the same for like Terminator 2 as well. Terminator 2 is a very 90s movie,
Oh
with the
yeah.
Galleria and all that. But I don't feel because some movies obviously you watch from the 80s and they are quite painfully dated and they are quite painfully 80s. But I don't know, I didn't find that with this. I found that it worked because I think you have that thing of Sarah Connor being like she's a carefree 80s gal and she works in a restaurant and her and the friend are like wearing Walkmans and getting ready to go clubbing and all that,
Yeah.
and then she just gets dragged into this like dark freaky underbelly of the city to try and help Kyle, and I think it just works really well.
Yeah, the setting of the movie like enhances the movie instead of dates it for me. Like a lot of people now will say, "Oh, it's dated." I don't really, I can't relate to a lot of what she's going through, and I don't find it accessible and stuff. But like for me, when she's going to the club, and that whole scene in the club where he's chasing her and then Kyle busts out of the bar and like with all the lights flashing and the colors, it's like whoa, this is a product this is a product of its time, but it's
Yeah.
really well made.
Yeah, very much so. Like it doesn't hinder it.
Yeah,
I think yeah, like and because Cameron sort of writes it quite broadly as well. Like Sarah Connor, all she like it's just sort of this thing of like, oh, she's just a young waitress. The idea is like she's got because I actually put that she like Sarah Connor sort of in like a teen comedy for a brief part of the film. Like
yeah,
she's a waitress and they put ice cream in her dress and she's supposed to be going on a date, but the guy cancels. So she's like, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna go catch a movie." And you're like, "Okay, this is a completely different movie." Until Arnie shows up and messes everyone up, and I think that is very relatable. Like that sort of idea of she's just young girl in the city, and then Kyle Reese's crazy ass shows up, and everything goes wild. What do you think of Kyle Reese as a character?
oh, I really like him as a character. Like he travels across time like for love, and he's kind
Yeah.
of like rooted in his human spirit. Like he pushes on in the war because he
Hmm.
loves Sarah and because he really believes in humanity. Like there's this whole section in the middle where he's having flashbacks. There's no dialogue at all, but then you can see like in his actions like oh he really cares for this soldier and he's like giving us all out trying to defeat the robots and you know why.
Yeah, that's it. Like his sort of thing of like his level of belief in John Connor
Yeah.
and his love of Sarah Connor, and then I think I can even think of the exact scene you're talking about because it's when they're throwing the bombs to blow
Yeah.
up the tanks, and the other soldier gets blasted, and you see him sort of like he has a brief second of grief on his face, and then he's back to fighting.
Yeah.
He's just like a character who's because there's no like soft edges to Kyle. All the way through the film, he's quite even though he's madly in love with Sarah Connor, he's quite not nasty, but he's brief with her. He's just sort of like he's quite rough with her,
Yeah.
and because he doesn't know how to interact with people, I guess, and then she sort of softens him a bit towards the end. Like the one thing as well that I love is right at the start when Arnie arrives and like it's all the lightning and stuff, and he's like crouched on the floor, perfect poise, and then just stands up and he's just this monster. And then it cuts across the city and there's like lightning in the sky, and Kyle Reese just falls on the
Oh,
floor
yeah,
like
yeah.
a bag of shit. He's like, fuck, just completely just not. It's a great instant sort of thing of like, one of these characters is very capable, very strong, and a bit intimidating, and one of them is completely out of his depth.
Yeah.
and the one that's completely out of your depth, that's your hero. So instantly you sort of sympathize with him because you're like, oh, this guy is completely lost. I hope he finds what he needs to find, like, because he's going to need all the luck he can get to beat Arnie, which is great. I mean, just very quick, snappy filmmaking.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I did find myself when I was watching it. I do just have so much praise for James Cameron. Like he just does, like that thing I was saying there about the opening with Arnie and all that. And then even later on, like the two detectives, like Lance Henriksen and I guess his boss or his partner,
His lieutenant, yeah.
they're characters who are in it. Yeah, like they're in it very briefly, but you do care about them quite quickly. That they are likable characters, and they're not like dickhead cops who you sort of against.
Yeah.
I did sort of find myself sympathizing with them, and then when Arnie's busting in and killing all the cops, you do sort of hope those two guys are going to escape, and obviously no one escapes. But I think that's good as well. Like even though there must only be about 10 characters in this film, the ones that you care about, you do care about them, and then obviously then that's when James Cameron kills them, like. But I think he does that very well to make realistically likable characters, and it draws you in, it relaxes you before Arnie, obviously, I'll be back and drives through the thing in one of the best sequences of the film, the police station assault.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the cops aren't yeah, they're not the generic cops who are just like, "Ooh, we don't believe you because the plot says we're not gonna believe you," because they like have legit reason. Like even at points in the film I'd question like, "Oh, you think you're sent from the future, really?" But then yeah, so I get where the cops are coming from. And you can see like they care for Sarah naman, like they don't imprison they don't arrest her when after she's caught escaping with Kyle, and like
Yeah,
yeah, so it kind of sucks when they died because like they were her protection. And also with the other characters like the roommate and her boyfriend, it kind of sucked
yeah,
too when they died because all they were just there, they weren't like even trying to protect Sarah, they were just
yeah.
happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Which is sort of like classic horror movie stuff, isn't it? Of just like the friends getting well, it's the sexed up friends getting murdered. Like that's very much a horror movie trope.
Yeah, it's pretty funny too because she's wearing headphones while the guy's getting murdered in the bedroom.
Yeah, that whole sequence where she's making the big sandwich and dancing around, and Arnie's just battering the guy is again like very horror movie stuff. Of one person being completely unaware of something horrific happening very close to them. Like, yeah, it's great how they sort of like play with your emotions and sort of it's. I think it's a weird one because if you watched Terminator 2
Yeah.
and you were sort of told that Terminator 1 was like a straight horror film, I think it'd be hard to believe because Terminator 2 isn't a horror film, is it?
Yeah, it's not. It's pretty big on spectacle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about movies that are big on spectacle, we also watched Terminator Genesis.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this one?
Oh, so I watched it. Everyone is pretty negative if you remember around the time before its release. Everyone is pretty negative on it because the second trailer showed that they made John Connor a Terminator, and
Yeah.
everyone was like so against that on the basis of spoilers and trailers alone, and because it kind of ruins their whole perception of John Connor in that way. Also,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but then I was like one of the pocket few people who were like championing it, saying, "Oh, it might be actually good, so let's like give it a chance." Yeah, I watched it opening night with my dad, and as the movie is going on, I was like, I'm starting to like this less and less. Like, and as
Yes.
then the more time I thought about it after, I was like, this is kind of not Terminator and kind of what I like least about the Terminator movies. Because up until the Arnold fight, the Arnold versus young Arnold fight at the beginning, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. It's a nice throwback. But after that, I was just like, it really degraded in quality until the point where I didn't associate it with Terminator anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually reviewed this for Audience Everywhere, and I gave it a quite positive review.
Yeah.
Because I think I was a little bit Terminator drunk at the time because I watched I think I just watched 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And I watched this, and I think I was just I'm such a big fan of Arnie that I just wanted it to be good. But I think you're totally right. Like I think I was into it and I was happy with it until they reveal like till Sarah and Pops reveal that they've got a time machine. And that was the point where I was like, oh no, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then everything after that, like I will say, in terms of action, it's pretty relentless. Like it doesn't really stop. It's pretty much chase, fight, chase, fight, chase, fight, all the way to the end. So I never found myself being bored.
Yeah.
But like I pretty much watched Terminator and then the next day watched this. And it was so weird to sort of have the Terminator be like a straight horror film and then this movie be like I sort of described it as like a sci-fi rom-com. Like it
Yeah, I
was so
feel that.
heavy on comedy and like awkward moments and like weird little bits that you're like because it was obviously they much must have watched the Terminator because it starts off like in that world before it veers off.
Yeah.
But it was very much like this is like a sci-fi movie, but like a rom-com, and like it was interesting. Like we were saying about the Terminator. Like say like the police station assault is such a tight action scene with just like the cops, the Terminator, Kyle and Sarah trying to escape, and it's just like in one building and all that. And then when you've got this and they've got like helicopter chases through downtown, you're like, no, you've completely missed the point here. Like, it just, I think I was happy with it up to a point, and I was like, this could be pretty cool, and I think there's some good ideas.
Yeah.
But then the more it sort of started to like ask questions it didn't answer, it was like, oh well, who sent Arnie back to 1979 or whatever? Oh, that information's been deleted. Like, well, yeah, but I mean, that's fine, but you have to give us some kind of hint of who that is. You can't just be like, oh, we don't know, so we just won't tell you, and that'll be enough. Like, you need some point where it's like, I don't know, something, some sort of hint, some sort of infinity gem thing that sort of implies there's more story. Like, I think that got a bit weird.
Yeah, I was watching it last night, I think, and I just realized last night that they never really told us who sent Arnold back because I was
Yeah,
pretty much under the assumption like, oh, it's Matt Smith. But then even John Connor was like, who sent you back? And I
yeah,
was just like so confused. I was what who did send Arnold back? It's like no, this time travel stuff doesn't make sense.
yeah. And then why was there a T-1000 in 1984?
Yeah,
Why was the Korean actor, I can't remember his name, who's Ace, and he was just there, never got explained, never, yeah, just never got explained. Like he was just there, and but they were ready for him,
yeah,
which makes no sense.
yeah. Really, it does not. And yeah, and regarding the action scenes, yeah, I never found myself bored while watching it. But after the movie, like the next day after I first watched it, I couldn't remember like which action scenes, like what happened in each action scene, and I couldn't remember like particular shots besides the
Yeah,
ones that were shown in the trailer.
yeah, no, that's very true.
Yeah, and it's mostly chase scenes, yeah. But
Hmm.
while I was watching, I was like, I think they're trying to emulate from previous Terminator movies, like
Hmm.
different types, except for the helicopter scene, because that just came out of nowhere. Um,
Yeah,
the T-1000 in a police car chasing the good guys, the chase scene on foot. There's also a scene where there's a building raid. They were trying to emulate
yeah.
the police headquarters raid from the first one, but then it just never really has the same impact on you like any other of the Terminator movies have.
No, because I mean, what the problem I found with it? They were always just too prepared. Like they just knew everything. Like at the start, it was too easy to kill a Terminator. Like in the first 30 minutes, they killed two Terminators.
Oh yeah,
Done. And like, well, the whole point of like the other movies is how hard it is to kill a Terminator. So it's like, okay, fine. So I guess if you had X amount of years to prepare, then okay, you'd know how to kill a Terminator. But that's not entertaining for an audience.
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't want to watch people who aren't ever in any sort of danger. It was too much of that thing where like, Arnie's like, oh, we can disrupt him with a magnet. So he just goes out and like makes those knuckle dusters, and then he can fight John Connor. You're like, no, he shouldn't be able to fight John Connor. That makes drama.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
should be because John Connor was never scary because he could always sort of beat him, and he just reappeared every 2 seconds. Like he always knew where they were,
Yeah.
and they always knew how to fight him. Like, what? Why do I give a shit then?
Yeah. Yeah, also the speaking of being prepared, when they traveled to like 2017 and asked Arnold, so what have you been doing? Then he shows them like his bunker of all these
Yeah,
weapons. Then they're like loading up, and I was like, so in the first Terminator movie, they'd really have to like scramble for as one piece of weapon. But then here they have
yeah,
like grenade launchers and different types of guns that could kill the Terminator, and that just didn't really
yeah.
have the same impact, you know?
Well, it actually one of the scenes I really enjoyed that I hadn't really noticed this before, like in the Terminator. You know the scene where Arnie goes to the gun shop
Yeah,
and he's just getting tooled up with weapons and he's like Uzi 9mm, this thing's laser sight, and he's just completely armed. As soon as that scene finishes and he kills the gun guy,
yeah,
it cuts to Kyle Reese with the shotgun and he's sawing off the handle.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like it's such a big difference of like, right, Arnie's your villain and he is tooled up to the max. And, Kyle Reese has got one shotgun he's stolen and he's like sawing it off like he's building the gun himself. And that make like I said before, that makes drama because you're like, well, how is he going to beat him? Whereas this movie, you're like, oh, they'll beat him because they'll use that big gun that they've used twice before, or they'll melt him with acid, or they'll use the magnet things, or there was never a sense that they were ever in peril. And I think that went all the way to the end of the movie because I quite enjoyed the bit. Like the first time I saw the movie, I quite enjoyed the bit where Arnie's sacrificing himself
yo,
to
yeah,
kill John Connor,
yeah,
and he says, "Protect my Sarah." And I was like, "Oh, that's a really sweet sentiment." Then he comes back to life.
yeah.
Oh,
As a
who gives a shit
T1000,
then?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, which is a whole thing.
yeah,
But well, what are And then the end of the film, like they just drive off into the sunset. Like, well, what am I supposed? John Connor's dead.
yeah,
John Connor will. They've left 1984, so they're not going to conceive him
again,
in the proper thing. So now the Terminators have won
yeah,
because they stopped him being conceived.
yeah,
Anyway, it just doesn't make any sense.
yeah, and
Oh my
yeah,
god.
that Arnold moment where he sacrificed himself. That's legit the only. That's the only thing I really like about Genesis because it felt like an
Hmm.
actual Terminator moment. Like I got the feelings of when Arnold was going down the lava and he put his thumbs up
Yeah.
to John Connor, and yeah, Emilia Clarke's Sarah is kind of like the John Connor from Terminator 2, where they have this back and forth
Yeah.
rapport, and she's kind of like a kid, and I guess, yeah, he's her dad or something.
Yeah, which
Dad
is a
figure.
whole thing. Like, and I think everyone does well. I think Arnie is. I do find him just incredibly watchable. So I
Yeah.
will. So I think everything he did, I was pretty happy with. I love Jason Clarke, the guy who plays John Connor, and obviously Amelia Clark's Ace, J.K. Simmons, Courtney Vance, and all that. Like it was, I think everyone was going for it. Everyone was trying their best, but the movie sort of let them down. I mean, Matt Smith. I love Matt Smith. Matt Smith's Doctor Who is my Doctor,
Yeah.
but he is not great in this film. Like they should not have made him do an American accent because he can't do it.
He has like
He just does
two
that. Yeah.
scenes, right? One where he
Hmm.
kidnaps John Connor, and
Hmm.
one is when he's just a hologram already.
Yeah, and he's just talking nonsense.
Yeah, it's
And
just
it,
threats.
yeah.
What did you think of Jack Courtney?
I love in the bottom of my heart Michael Byrne
Yeah.
in Terminator. Like he is like I think the thing was if you look at Linda Hamilton and you look at Amelia Clarke, you can kind of go like, oh yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. But they didn't. I didn't feel like they tried to get an actor who, even like Terminator Salvation, they had Anton Yelchin,
Yeah.
who's like a little skinny dude who sort of could feasibly, be Kyle Reese.
Yeah.
Whereas Jai Courtney's like a big dude. Like Kyle Reese is like a little wiry, muscly guy because he's a he's a soldier in the future. He's not going to be able to like. He's not going to be lifting. You know what I mean? He's not going to have like big muscles on muscles. He's supposed to be like a little wiry guy. And Jai Courtney's just a grok. He's just a big dude. But he's Australian, so that I've got to support that. But yeah, I think he tries his best, but the movie lets him down.
Yeah, I found this version of Kyle Reese a bit too whiny, and he keeps like
Yeah,
asking questions, whereas the old Kyle Reese was just the one who would take in charge of the situation.
yeah,
But I guess
he's all business.
yeah, but I guess that's like the product of what they tried to do with the time travel and changing the
Hmm.
whole destiny of the characters. I just couldn't find myself rooting for this Kyle Reese in particular.
No, because he was just sort of, I think the whole thing about him talking about his parents and like seeing him as a kid and all that, like, no, that's not like because obviously when they have the flashback and they show that John Connor like found Kyle in the sewers,
Yeah,
it's like, well, that's not the story that Kyle tells in the Terminator. Like for me, that sequence where Cowrie says to Sarah, "Oh, John Connor, we were rounded up, we were put in camps, and one man taught us to break through the fences and smash those motherfuckers and all that." I love that, and I've always wanted that movie. I've always wanted the movie where it's like humanity is at its lowest ebb, and John Connor is like the messiah and saves everyone. And that movie, but that movie never exists. And even now, like the start of this movie is a little bit of that, but not. It just doesn't work. It's too rushed.
yeah,
Like that opening thing, you have a little bit of flashback, and then it's like, oh well, now we've won the war. Oh, but they've got a time machine. It's like, oh, we've destroyed Skynet, so all the robots have shut down, but not the robot that they've sent to the future, sent to the past, who wouldn't have a connection to Skynet because he's in the past. Oh, don't worry about it. There's just it feels like the script was like written in one burst, and then they never went back and reread it.
yeah. Like it may seem a bit harsh, but what I've kind of accepted in my head, or at least if they continue with this series from Genesis, I've kind of accepted that it feels like fan fiction a lot of the time,
Yes.
especially with the new
Yeah,
actors
very much.
coming on board. Because I never like I agree that the John Connor thing could have worked because it could have hammered home the theme of like not losing hope in the face
Mm.
of Terminator problems. But the way they like um the way they execute it, it just never really works. Like they make John Connor a villain, and then that's it. They just leave him as a villain to be stopped. Like it never really does anything for them as characters. And I don't know if you've seen Terminator Salvation yet.
I haven't.
Oh yeah, because I remember at the time when you posted your review of Genesis, you said you haven't seen Terminator Salvation, and I just
Mm.
was I wanted to recommend it so bad because after Terminator Genesis, I really wanted to just put on Salvation again and just enjoy the future they set up there.
Mm.
Because
I will have to watch it.
yeah, you should. Like, I don't champion it as much, but then after Genesis, I really wanted to. I think it's also what like drove my dislike for Genesis a lot because for me, Terminator movies, they're supposed to show ingenuity and innovation in a
Mm.
way. So the first one and the second one obviously are so are like innovative. When it came out, they were
Yeah.
like different from what all the other action movies that were coming out at that time were doing. And Terminator 3, that was just them trying to copy what the success they made with Terminator 2, like what worked there.
Yeah.
So they just tried to rehash that same plot, just different time. And that's why I
Mm.
kind of like Terminator Salvation. It was trying to do something new with the series. It wasn't time travel anymore. They were in the future. It was a
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic survival movie. And then they just abandoned that for Genesis and they tried to go back to what made the first two work. Like if you read interviews with the director Alan Taylor, he said he wanted to he wanted to bring Terminator back to Terminator 1 and 2, forget 3 and
Mm.
4. And I felt like that was just like the wrong direction for what they were, what the Terminator series needs, because we, I think we've proven, the audience has proven that we don't want um more Terminator 1 and 2. We just want a different direction for the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I felt was off with Terminator Genesis as a whole.
Yeah, because it is that weird thing because they are really faithful to Terminator when they have the scenes in Terminator.
Yeah,
Sorry, in
yeah.
1984, and that's cool. But then, yeah, like you say, and then they sort of go, oh, it's like they've said, but what if Terminator was Terminator 2? Like, no, don't. That's stupid. Think of something new. Like, I know they've probably watched the the Star Trek reboot and thought, oh, we can do timelines. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but if you're gonna do that, do something interesting with it. Like, find some other way of doing it. Or, like, I did think, I didn't know that when I first went to see this, I didn't know that they time traveled to 2017. So I thought the whole movie was set
Oh
in the
yeah, same.
80s, and the baddies were like the Liquid Metal Terminator and John Connor. And I was like, okay, that sounds really cool because I think they've missed a trick because an 80s period piece, like the 80s are so in now after like Stranger Things. If they did a movie that was the Terminator, but set in the like that this movie Genesis, but set in the 80s, and they sort of got a bit creative with it and dicked around with the timelines and stuff like that. They could have made something quite interesting, but I think the whole thing falls apart when it's like, oh, we've got 23 years before Genesis launches, so we'll time travel to the day
Oh
before.
yeah.
Like, no, just go and find Miles Dyson's ancestor and kill him and just be done with it. Dyson is key. Just go and just deal with that. Or, I don't know, just works, do something out, but don't jump to the moment it's about to happen. And also, as well, if they leave 1984, they cannot conceive John Connor. You know, it just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. The whole point of the movie, the first movie, is that they have to meet and, they're sort of. Because I mean, one of the best things, or for me, one of the best things about the Terminator, I absolutely love, there's just that sequence where Kyle talks about the photograph and he says, he fell in love with her through the photograph. And he talks about the photograph and he says, oh, I always wondered what you were thinking about when the photo was taken.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the movie, you see the photo get taken and she was thinking about him. And that always just like, my heart is just like, oh, that's so good. That's such good, cheesy James Cameron stuff. But I love it. And then this movie is just like, oh yeah, we're destined to fall in love with each other. Cool. Done. And by the end of the movie, they've shown no interest in each other except for the fact that they have to. And then they get together. But it doesn't matter that they get together in 2017 because they've already killed John Connor,
Yeah. And like it goes back
Jesus.
to what you were saying with the rom-com elements of how they
Yeah.
got together. I kind of got like a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe where they're like they don't fit in and they're just arguing most of the time till
Yeah.
they actually make
Yeah.
friends. But I don't think that's fitting for Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese and their type of relationship and what they were trying to do with their love.
Yeah, it's so odd that like because I think that if you not so much Salvation but like the Terminator movies that involve time travel, I guess.
Yeah.
I think there is like you can chart like a graph where as the horror elements go down, the comedy elements go up. Because there are like legit slapstick scenes in this film, and like they get arrested, and the theme from Cops plays, and then they're all getting mugshots, and like Arnie does his big robot smile. Like, are you fucking kidding me? What is
Oh
this?
yeah, when he goes through the roof of the police car and he goes through the
Yeah.
windshield and says "Get out," and
Yeah, nice to see you. Get out. Like, oh wow, just yeah, just weird, just very odd, like how comic they sort of make it. Like you say, very rom-commy, which is, I think it sort of reminds me of how the Rocky films went, like sort of pre-Rocky Balboa, where you had like this first movie that was very much a drama about poverty and Philadelphia and just like being a loser and trying to live up to your potential and all that. And then by the time you get to Rocky Five, it's just become like a parody of itself, and it's terrible and all that. And then I think these films have sort of done that with each movie. They've added in different. They focus more on different genres. Like even James Cameron said he didn't consider the Terminator to be an action film, but he found that in reviews and like when he would speak to people, the action scenes were the bits that people singled out. So that's why he was sort of like, oh well, I'll move more into, then he moved more into action movies. Because like I think he made Terminator, and then after Terminator is Aliens.
Yeah.
And Aliens is a horror film, 100%. But again, it's a horror action film and sci-fi. It's very much like Terminator. Whereas by the time you get to Terminator 2, that is a straight up action film, and then obviously like True Lies and so on. But Genesis just, yeah, there's no horror because you never feel like anyone's in peril. Like you should feel as though Kyle Reese is gonna die, but you never do.
Yeah, you should. And
because yeah.
yeah, and what you were saying, like it becomes a parody of itself. It feels like that a lot, especially when they reuse the same catchphrases and like iconic moments from the old Terminator movies, like the "I'll be back" and the "Come with me if you want to live."
Oh yeah, they even like because she shouts to him as well, "Come with me if you want to live. Come on your feet, soldier."
Yeah.
And that for me is a scene I absolutely love in Terminator, where Kyle's just all fucked up and he can't get up. And she's like, "Come on, Reese, on your feet, soldier." And he gets up, and I love that. And then there's like a deleted scene, or it's in the director's cut of Terminator 2. She's in the hospital, and she has like a vision of Kyle comes to see her. I don't know if you've seen this.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And yeah, and then he sort of says to her, "Why are you here when John's out there? They're gonna get him." And she's like, "Oh, I can't do it, I'm too weak." And he picks her up and says, "On your feet, soldier." And then they have a big smooch, and then she decides she's gonna break out. And that's fantastic. Just throwing it in the film because people will recognize it. You're like, why? That's just dumb. It's fan service that fans are gonna dislike.
Yeah.
No fan was like, "Yeah, I'm so glad she said that." Everyone's just like, "Oh, okay. So you've watched the film. Good on you."
Yeah, that was in the trailer as well. And I was like seated with my mom while watching the trailer. Then she turned to me and she said, "Oh my god, that was so bad. That's so forced."
Yeah. Yeah, no, because that trailer, I was quite excited from the trailer, but at the same time, I'm such a sucker for that sort of stuff. But the trailer had "Come with me if you want to live" and "I'll be back."
Yeah.
And I think the "Get Out" as well. So it had all of those scenes in the trailer to sell the movie to you. To be like, "Hey guys, he's going to say the things he said in the other films.
Yeah, exactly.
Come watch our film." Anything else to add about Genesis?
Oh yeah, you mentioned like Star Trek and how they used time travel in Star Trek 2009. And yeah, before the movie came out, I made that list for audiences everywhere, the how to use time travel to reboot your series. Star Trek, they really used it well because it really played into the themes of destiny, and they actually used Leonard Nimoy pretty well in that movie. And for X-Men, it was kind of like a franchise reflection where they were like, the future isn't defined. There's still hope for the future, even though they made mistakes along the way, especially like X3 and X-Men Origins, if that's what they were thinking about when they said those lines. But here it doesn't really do anything. It's just another means to continue the series. And that really annoyed me because Terminator, I mean, if you focus like on the post-apocalypse, post-Judgment Day timeline of the events alone, you can really do a lot. You can do like a Mad Max style movie from or like you can go back to like other points in time. But here they try to keep focus on the Connor family, and I feel like that's like a wrong decision for if they continue to keep doing Terminator movies. Because when Terminator Genesis came out, that was the year Mad Max Fury Road came out and Star Wars The Force Awakens came out.
And Creed.
Yeah. Oh my god, I just made that connection now. Okay. Yeah. So when it came out, I was wondering why would they keep focus on the Connors, especially when these three movies prove that if you take the risk and focus on different aspects of the universe, it really provides a fresh and innovative way to look at the story. You can like take the
Yeah,
story from different points of view. You don't have to keep rehashing the same plot line over and over.
very much so. Like there's scenes in the Terminator, like when Reese is getting interrogated, and he's talking about how he's like, I was in the 32nd Division under Perry, 2021 to 2027.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I hear that, I'm like, I want to know that story. I want to see Kyle become Kyle Reese. Go from like being in a camp, getting rescued, becoming a soldier, fighting the machines and all that, or go wild with it. You've got time travel, so send the Terminator back to like Wild West days, and he's after a different ancestor of the Connors, or
Yeah.
send him back to some crazy period in time and just go nuts with it and see what happens. Because if the work is good, it'll work. I mean, I personally, someone told me about Creed, and they said, oh, it's like Rocky, but it's all about before it came out, before I saw a trailer, someone's like, oh, they're making a new Rocky film, and it's about Apollo Creed's son, and I was like, nah, not interested. But obviously, it was one of the best films of the year.
Yeah.
I know there were people who weren't interested in the idea of like another Star Wars film, and it was fantastic. And obviously, Mad Max, I had zero interest in that film. I was like, Mad Max, whatever. And obviously, again, that's one of the best films ever. If the work is good and it's well made, doesn't matter. It will be good. Whereas this was very much like, well, fuck, we're gonna lose the rights to these movies. Let's just get a script done and get it out. And I think their main thing was like, we've got to put Arnie in it, but Arnie's old now, so how can we deal with that? And this was how they did it, and it's a pretty good way of doing it, but they could have thought of better ways.
Yeah.
Oh no! In fact, no. They could keep this way. Just think of a better story.
Yeah, something like that doesn't feel forced or isn't about the Connors anymore, because right now,
Yeah.
5 movies and 1 television series down, and I'm like, I don't really have much investment anymore in future storylines
No.
about the Connor family.
Yeah, I mean, even like by Terminator 3, when it was like, oh, they've sent another Terminator back to kill John Connor, you're like, no, snooze. I've seen this plot. Because even like, if you watch Terminator and Terminator 2 very close to each other, there's a lot of scenes and shots that mirror each other. It's very much a sort of remake or a rehash, but it works. Because Cameron makes it work. He puts it's almost like it's that sort of thing where it's like, he made Terminator, and then they said, oh, can you do a sequel? And he's like, yeah, if you give me 10 times the money. And they've gone, yeah, cool. And he's like, right, now I'm going to go wild with it. And, and go for spectacle. And it works, which this film does not. On Twitter, I did a poll asking if Terminator was a slasher movie. And it was 57% said no. Now, our good friend Dego Waffles, at Dego Waffles, Diego Crespo, he's argued quite a lot that this is definitely a slasher movie. But we had a bit of a counter view. So, at Metal Loud tweeted, here's a comment for you. Terminator 1 is overrated and an okay movie at best, severely dated. Terminator 2 is amazing. JC is a fraud. Now, I sort of read that as I was going to work, and I thought at first when he wrote JC, he meant John Connor. So I was a little bit confused by that, then worked it out.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that? Terminator 1 is overrated, an okay movie at best, severely dated. T2 is amazing, but James Cameron is a fraud.
I do not get the James Cameron is a fraud. Like, just because...
No.
I don't know if he means the filmography as a whole, or just in regards to Terminator. But if you watch Terminator, that his style for that movie was... his directing for the movie was so good. And the way he kept the pace as it was, like, it's perfect, like, as it is. Like, there's no fat on that movie. And all the action scenes are really well made. And the scenes where he amplifies the horror elements over the action elements, it's really well done on his part.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think the only James Cameron movie that I don't really enjoy, I wasn't a fan of The Abyss, but obviously Aliens, the Terminator movies, I love True Lies. Obviously, like Titanic, in my misspent youth, I fancied a girl who loved that movie, so I went to see that on the cinema 12 times.
Oh, so you provided the box office for that?
Yeah, so it was just me. That's why that movie is as popular as it is, because I was trying to make time with a girl. And obviously that's a 3-hour movie, so I don't know where I got the time. But I think when that movie came out in the cinema, it was out in the cinema in England forever. It was out for months and months and months and months. It was just never not on the cinema. And the Celine Dion song was number one in the charts until I think Run DMC knocked it off the number one spot. I enjoyed that movie, and then I caught it on TV a few years ago. Like I was just, I think it was when I was living in Korea, and I just turned the TV on, and it was on. I watched about 20 minutes of it, and I was like, this film is awful. And I've just sort of like reassessed it, and that film is shitty. Like, it's a great spectacle at the end, but so much of it is, like, stilted dialogue and crap. And then, like, Avatar, I think I'm like everyone else. It is definitely a movie that exists. Yeah. And it's definitely a movie I've seen, and that's it. I think I enjoyed it, probably.
Well, I love T1 and T2, obviously. I think I've only seen the Titanic and Avatar. I don't think I've seen a lot of his work. Oh, Aliens, of course, yeah.
Aliens, of course, yeah. True Lies, I would definitely advise it. I'm not sure how well it holds up, but it's very much like it continues the sort of, I guess if you chart like a timeline, you have like say Terminator, Aliens, Terminator 2, True Lies.
Yeah.
You start off with straight horror action with a bit of comedy, and then by the time you get to True Lies, it's pretty much straight action comedy. Mm-hmm. But it's very, very good.
Okay, noted. But with Avatar, actually, I think the first time I was watching it, I think I fell asleep 30 minutes in, and like I woke up when the tree was burning.
Oh yeah.
And there was still like a bunch of events still to happen.
A bunch of hours to go.
Yeah. So I had to like go back to it when it came out on Blu-ray.
I used to show it to like I used to show it to my students in Korea. Like if we had like a special lesson, I'd just throw the first hour on because the first hour is pretty solid.
Yeah.
And that would take up the lesson, and they were really happy to watch it because it's quite easy to understand even if you don't speak great English because it has subtitles and so on, and it's pretty straightforward what's happening, which was great for me because I would just sort of like sit at the back of the class and then I could be like pretending that I was teaching a lesson. So I'd be like, okay guys, what is happening here? Who's this guy? And they could, we could have a chat about it. But I didn't really have to do any work. So thank you, James Cameron. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up about Terminator?
Yeah,
first or Genesis?
Who was that who commented the Terminator was just okay?
That was Metal Loud.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's Metal Loud.
Terminator 1, love it more than... Wait, what do you think's better, Terminator 1 or 2?
I think I may have argued that Terminator 2 was better in the past. I think there's an Audiences Everywhere article in which I argue that Terminator 2 is better. But I've probably watched Terminator 1 quite a few times in the past year. Like, it's been on TV a few times, and now it's on Netflix. I've seen it a couple of times. Like, I've been around at people's houses and they've been watching it and stuff like that. And it's just a solid, great film. Like you say, it just moves. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and it never stops to let you catch your breath. Like the slowest scene is like when Arnie's cutting out his own eye. It's just relentless. It's great. So I think at the moment I would say Terminator.
Okay, cool.
You?
Oh, Terminator, for sure. It's one of my favorite movies ever.
Obviously that's why you chose it for this.
Yeah, and I had a lot to say when it came to Terminator Genesis.
Yeah, that's... I'm sure you'll have obviously with this being your first podcast, you'll have the joy of we'll finish recording and all that, and then you'll go about your life, and then about an hour you'll be like, oh shit, I should have said this, I should have said this, I should have said this.
Oh yeah.
But that happens to the best of us. It'll happen to me, I'm sure. So Anton, where can people find you on the internet?
On same as you, audienceseverywhere.net. Okay, on Twitter at Tales2Antonish. Yes.
Fantastic.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, like Anton, you can find me at audienceeverywhere.net. You can find us on Twitter at FromFirstToLastPod, or email us directly at FromFirstToLastPodcast@gmail.com. Other than that, thank you for everyone who voted in our Twitter poll and who commented. And yeah, awesome. So yeah, like I say, I'll say it again. Anton, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Good time.
No problem, mate. Well, my name's been Sean Fallon. This has been From First to Last. Goodbye.